Hello everyone, today we're going to look at how to use Excel to create bar graphs and histograms. So first we're going to just create a frequency table in order to do a bar graph. So I'm going to look at favorite color and the frequency. So I'm going to double click on A so that it expands to the width that I need it to be. So the favorite colors I'm going to choose are just the basics: red, blue, green, and yellow. And then the frequency is something like 3432. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so if I want to make a bar graph, I'm going to click and highlight both of my columns. I'm going to include the titles. And then I'm going to go to Insert. And then over here I have Charts. There's a whole bunch I can choose from. I'm going to choose the bar graph. And then in here I have a whole bunch again that I can choose from. I have 3D ones. I have vertical, I have horizontal. I'm going to choose the most basic one for now. I had a frequency table. I can choose different setups of down here, up here too. So if I want different things to look at, I got a whole bunch more. Right, I'm going to again just stick with the first one for now. Notice it has my numbers in here. They are the heights, and again those heights are the frequencies. My title is the frequency. Each category is labeled with the correct color. So up here I'm going to click the word frequency and I'm going to change it to favorite color. In here I can play around with how it looks. So I'm going to right click in this chart area and go almost all the way down to Format Chart Area. And this little area is going to come up here. If I go to Chart Options and I click the arrow, I can format different parts of it: the chart title, the plot area. I'm going to go to Series Frequency, so those are the actual bars. And I can click the bars, and I can do things here like change the gap width. So that is just the space between the bars. So if I change it to 100% and hit Enter, the space between the bars is going to be the same width as the bars themselves, and we're going to use this feature later when we talk about the histograms. Okay. I can change the colors of my graph. If I go to the little paint bucket, I go to Fill, I can do a pattern, I can do a gradient, I can do a solid, I can go down to the colors and I can change the color. If I want it to be green, it's now green. I want it to be a dark green. Okay. I can also change individual bars. So if you notice, each of them have these little circles around the four corners. If I click or double click a certain bar, only this one now has the circles. So if I go to my paint bucket still and I change this one to red, it will just change my red column to red. So I can click on the blue one. Again, only the blue has the circles. I can change it to blue. Green's already green, so then I'll click yellow and I can change this one to yellow. So I can play around with it a lot. After I've decided that I like it, I can either copy it by doing Control-C while it's highlighted, or I can right click it and click copy, and then I can paste it into something like Paint or Word if I want to use it for something else. Okay, so you can always copy it and use it somewhere else. So that is how we do a bar graph. And now I'm going to show you how to do a histogram, which is slightly different. So I'm going to click out of this, and I'm going to go to a new sheet so that I don't have to erase this. So a new sheet, and now we're going to look at a histogram. In order to do a histogram, I need the raw data first. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to input 20 random numbers into my column A. So I'm going to do 2-digit numbers. Can be a 0, the first digit. So numbers from 0 to 99. So I don't want to include anything bigger than 100. And I'm just going to do up to 20. So there we go. So 20 numbers between 0 and 99. In my B column, I am going to do 25, 50, 75, and 100. So these numbers in my B column are going to end up being the upper bounds for my class sizes in my histogram. Okay, so it's very important to remember their upper bounds. And we're going to see how this works out. So once I have my raw data, my upper bounds for my class sizes, I am going to use something called data analysis. So you probably don't have it included in your Excel at the moment. It is an add-in, so I'm going to show you how to add it into your Excel. So you're going to go to File, go to Options, so it's all the way down at the bottom. Once you're in here, over on the left, we have all these different options. We're going to go to Add-ins, and sometimes it takes a second. And then I'm going to go to the very bottom, where it says Manage Excel Add-ins. I'm going to hit Go. And now I have them clicked off because I've already had them added into mine, but yours probably won't be checked off. So you want to check off both analysis tool packs, and then click OK. Doesn't look like anything's changed, but if you go to Data, over here you'll see Analysis, and then Data Analysis. So this is what we just added into our Excel. So I'm going to click it. A bunch of different options show up. These are all different things for statistics. We're going to end up using a couple of them throughout the course. What we're interested in right now is the histogram. So these are in alphabetical order. So histogram is under H, and I'm going to click OK. We have a lot of different options coming up now. So the input range are the data values. So I'm going to click it and make sure that I see my blinking vertical line. And then I'm going to go over and highlight my 20 values. So it's going to go from A1 to A20. Bin range, and click it, make sure you see the blinking vertical line, and then I'm going to highlight my B values. So my bin range are, again, my upper bounds for my class sizes. If I had labels, I would check off the labels here, but I don't, so I'm not going to. Output options, where do I want my output to be? It can be in a new workbook, it can be in a new worksheet, or it can be in a random cell. So I'm going to click Output Range. Again, click it, make sure you see the blinking light, the blinking vertical line, and then I'm going to click over on G1. Doesn't matter, just as long as you choose an empty cell. The last thing I'm going to do is check off Chart Output. So this is going to give me the actual histogram. If I don't click this, it's only going to give me a frequency table. So click it because I want the picture, and then click OK. So I have two things that pop up, my frequency table and my histogram. So the first thing I'm going to do is click my histogram, then right click it, go to Format Chart Area, and I'm going to do the same thing that I just did with the bar graph. I'm going to go down to my series, which is frequency, click the bars, and I'm going to change the gap width to 0 because again it's a histogram and we need our bars to touch. So now we have a true histogram. I'll just leave it everything else the same. The heights are the frequencies. Okay? And again, this 25, what this really means is I'm looking at numbers from 0 to 25. 0 because I know I didn't put anything negative in. So that's 0 to 25. This is 26 to 50. Because again, I didn't put any decimals, so I know there's no 25.4 or 25.7. Oops, this one is 51 to 75. This one is 76 to 100. And then more is just anything above my largest bin. So my more is really 101 or more. Notice that when I changed these guys, it changed over here as well. So if whatever I put into here, it's going to put over here. So in a true histogram, you would either label the minimums, the maximums, or the midpoints. So I'm just labeling the range just so again that we know what those actually meant. So the 25 was anything 25 or below. 50 was from above 25 to 50, which again in this case is 26 to 50 because I don't have decimals. So that's how I would make a frequency histogram. Sometimes we want a relative frequency histogram. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a relative frequency table as well. So just next to my frequency, I'm going to put in, relative frequency. That went away. I'm in the wrong cell. Alright, let's let's try that again. Relative frequency. In order to create a relative frequency table, I need the total. So under bins, I'm going to put total. And now I know that if I add up my frequencies, I should be getting 20 because I know that I put in 20 numbers. But if I didn't know that, then I want to add up all these numbers here. I could do it a few ways. I could grab my calculator and add them up, or I could tell Excel to do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, in my cell where my total will be, I'm going to put an equal sign. An equal sign is telling Excel that it has to do some math. So equals, I want to add up these numbers. There are really a couple different ways I could do that. I could either just start typing that in, 7 plus 8 plus 2 plus 3 plus 0, but I don't need that. And it will give me my 20. Or I could instead use a command. And if I start typing in a command, sum, because I want to add things up, it'll start telling me different options that include the word sum. So all of these include the letters SUM. The first one is the one that I want. It adds all the numbers in a range of cells. So once I'm done typing the command, I'm going to open parentheses. And now I have something else in here. I have sum, parenthesis, number 1, comma, in brackets, number 2, comma, dot, dot, dot. So this is telling me that I need to plug in at least one number, and then anything in brackets is optional. So I want to add at least one number. I want to add up 2, 4, 5 numbers. I could again just plug in my numbers, 7, comma, 8, comma, 2, comma, 3, close parentheses. Again, I get 20. Or, if I don't want to plug in the whole numbers, they could be really nasty. They could be huge decimals. Instead, when I have my open parenthesis, I can click and drag my values. So it's going to do the sum of H2 to H6. So this is H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. And then I can close it, and it will still give me my 20. The next thing I have to do is create the actual relative frequencies. Remember, these are found by taking the frequency and dividing by the total frequency. So again, I'm going to hit the equal sign because I want Excel to do the math. I want it to take the frequency here, so I'm going to click it, and I'm going to tell it to do H2, which happens to be 7, divided by, so that's just the slash button, it's also the question mark button without the shift, divided by 20, and then click enter. It's going to give me 0.35. Now I want to do it again. I could either do equals and then click this button and then divide by 20, and I could keep doing that. That takes a lot of time. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell Excel to do what it did here, but also do it here, 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 and here. So I do that by clicking the cell that has the formula in it. I'm going to click out of that though. So I click the cell, and then down in the bottom right corner we see a little square. If I take my mouse, which right now has a kind of a bubble letter cross sign or a plus sign, if I hover over the square, it becomes a skinnier black plus sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click it and then drag it down. So click it, drag it down, and then when I release it, it is doing the same thing it just did. It took this guy divided by 20. This one, if I click it and I go into the function bar, it's taking H3 dividing it by 20. I'll hit enter to get out of it. I can check another one. To get my 0.15, it was taking H5, which is the highlighted one here, 3, and dividing by 20. Click enter. It's my 0.15. To make sure I did it correctly, I can add up these values. And remember that when you're adding up relative frequencies, it better equal 1. So again, equals, because I want Excel to do it. Sum, because I want to add them. And then I can click and drag the values that I wanted to add. So in this case, it's adding I2 to I6. And I get my 1. So that means I did it correctly. So now I want to create a histogram for my relative frequency. I'm going to click and drag my bin don't include the total because that's not part of my actual histogram. So I will include the title though, bin to 101 plus, and then I'm going to press and hold the control button, and I'm going to click and drag my third column in this table, the relative frequency. Okay, so again, I'm just going to click and drag the bins and then hold control down while I do my second one. So that's going to select both columns. And again, I'm not going to include the total. So just like before, I go to Insert, Bar Graph, choose the first bar graph. And if we notice, it's going to look very similar to the histogram. I will change it so that it is a histogram and not a bar graph. So right-click it, Format Chart Area, choose the series, choose the bars, and then gap width, I'm going to change to 0. I'll get rid of that. And again, these two histograms have the same exact shape. The only difference is the height is frequency versus the height being relative frequency. Okay? So now you know how to make a regular bar graph, how to make a frequency histogram, and how to make a relative frequency histogram. So play around with those, and again, you can change the color, you can change the title, you can change a whole bunch of it. But those are the basics. So try that out. Let me know if you have any questions.